Okay, doing a flip through of the book. The 3 tenets. Here's a quote from Subcomandante Marcos of the Zapatistas. An amazing quote. And this is for Nancy. Here's another quote from Kafka. And then here's how the book is organized. Try to keep it lean, but we're still at 40 pages. Also, since it's meant to be a cooperative game, I made an accompanying book with a bunch of random tables and oracles so that you don't need a GM. But of course, you could also play this as with a GM, just like any other Fate game. This was done mainly as an exercise in prefigurative imagination. Basically, it's trying to model the kind of world that we want to live in, right? And we do this because we want to nurture a sense of a shared purpose, which will drive us forward towards these goals. And also, as noted here, it's very important to stay hopeful. So optimism is definitely, one of the things that I'm hoping players will feel from playing this game, if you do agree with these goals. But I mean, who wouldn't, right? Unless you're like a racist or a billionaire. Another world is possible. Again, riffing on the theme of hope. Just some acknowledgements here. These are the different places where I got the oracles and tables from. But the system of this book is mainly Fate Core, and Microscope. 2 great games, and then a bunch of stuff from other places. Okay, it also says here that the vibe, although it would probably end up being completely different, but the vibe is a mix of Andor, Hunger Games, and maybe X-Men 97. Those would be for the exciting parts when the revolutions are going on, when there's probably a lot more action. And then the second half of the game is characters looking back from a freer future. And this is maybe where the solarpunk vibes start to come in. There are a few pages here with some inspirational figures, many of whom should be familiar to people who follow these causes. So we have our very own Emilio Jacinto. We have Esther the Wonder Pig, who was very influential to me when I was becoming vegan around 2014 or so. Lionel Peltier was just released. The ALF, of course. Angela Davis, Subcomandante Marcos, the journalist of Palestine. Martyr Anas. And other people, right? So we have McLean, we have Victor Hara, Howard Zinn, Leila Khaled, Fred Hampton, some people close to me, like my Auntie Jing Jing and my Auntie Jonna. People who have inspired our veganism and other forms of activism, like the Shack 7. Nancy, of course, is very influenced by David Life and Sharon Gannon, who founded Jivamukti Yoga. Some writers like John Sambomatsu and K-Punk, who I love. Some other people here. And some local activists from the Philippines, whose work I really deeply appreciate. Okay, and then there are spaces like this where you can fill in stuff yourself. Okay, so what else do we have here? These are all of the different bad things that will be defeated by, the revolutions that take place here in this game. something we of course believe in wholeheartedly. None are free until all are free. So in this game, all of these things have been or will be defeated. Okay, so I'll just skim these parts here, but you have some instructions. I tried to make it as easy to use as possible for new players, but if you're new to tabletop RPGs, it's probably best to play with someone more familiar with the FATE system, or who could probably GM maybe the first session or so. Don't really need a lot of stuff. Again, it's meant to be for everyone. I have some sample play, which also serves as a tutorial. So this is learning to play, or playing to learn rather. First of all, starting with session 0, which is when we create the characters. So this just walks you through that whole process. And then, like I mentioned, there are a bunch of tables that we provide to help you out. Right. Okay, so it goes through a bunch of steps, and this basically follows what's in Fate Core. Of course, with some prompts like you see down here. And then by the time that you get here, you should have made your own characters and filled out the character sheet. There's also some details on how to play Fate Core. Pretty simple system, I would say. Very good for narrative style roleplay. And once you've finished all of that, you would end up with a character sheet, maybe something like this. So this is something that I just made in a notebook for one of our early test plays, which went pretty well. Here's a flow chart for the game. So you'll see here that there is a future phase and a tomorrow phase, and this is where most of the gameplay takes place. So on one end, you have a phase that takes place in further future. This is when the world is already liberated. And then the other half is in the time of revolutions. So players will be alternating between these two phases. And then you play out scenes, and that basically is the gameplay. There's also a calendar system inspired by Morkborg, where we look to attain a certain number of victories to end the game, and that just gives it a bit of structure as well as some narrative direction. And this is just explains what I just talked about here. So the two phases. More details. So these clocks, I really like these clocks. These came from Blades in the Dark. So that's just one way of managing the story and making sure that things, advance the plot and eventually get resolved. Then you have the liberation phase. We have things called revolutionary moves. So these are other things that were inspired by things like Iron Sworn, some of the Powered by the Apocalypse games. These are generally the things that the revolutionaries would be doing to advance whatever fight or cause they're a part of. So there are a bunch of different things, and this would yield a lot of good role play. As you can see, there's a lot of variety that the players can try out in their stories. All of these, of course, are very important for real organizing, I would say. And then here we have some tables to help players fill out details. So we have tables for dreams. If you want to randomize the revolutionary moves and define some locations, we can do that here. This here is where the microscope stuff comes in, right? So we have this thing known as the Calendar of Freedoms, and it sets the structure for the game. So at the beginning point, this is when the revolutions are underway, and then you'll see a series of 4 victories. So this is when the revolutions are taking place, but of course the other half of the game is taking place here. There we go. When the final victory has already been achieved. And so this is like the future phase. It's confined here, whereas the revolution phase will be taking place here. So this is borrowed from Microscope, where they have a like a way to define a grand history. And that's basically what we're trying to do here. And then there's a table here for interpreting this calendar of freedoms, again, to give more detail to the story. Here we have some of the victories that can be achieved. So again, there are 4 victories before the game ends, right? So some possible victories would be that the economic machine of the oppressor has been destroyed. The political agenda has been transformed, right? And we give some examples here. And for each of these victories that are achieved, something permanent about the game changes. And this is what we call world aspects, right? So once a victory has been achieved, let's say speciesism has been defeated. So of course, the way that we treat animals would change, right? And that's what world aspects are all about. So this would then create, a dimension or rule that has to be respected, where we no longer consume animals or treat them as commodities or things, right? So that would be an example of a world aspect. But just going back to the victories, these are 2 examples here. There are a few others here. True global solidarity being achieved, systems of care being established, the apparatuses of violence of the enemy being defeated, symbol of hope being established. And then, of course, we have the final victory. Here's an example. Animal farming does not exist. Animals everywhere live free and happy lives. And then at the very end, you're meant to reflect on your victory. So if victory was achieved, you're meant to go through these prompts here. If it was not achieved, all is not lost, because we can definitely build even on our failures, right? It just reveals what needs to be done. And then here, we end the book with the second part of session 0. I recommend that we actually get the story underway through what I'm calling a splash scene. So you start in the middle of the action, and there are some prompts here that will allow you to create that scene, right? So you are also guided by the victories. There's always the first victory that you were just a part of that will help set up the story, right? And keep it moving forward. So there's a bunch of steps here, some guidance, right? Examples, ways to play it out. We always provide as many prompts as possible, just to make things more accessible for new players, and also just generally to help you form a satisfactory story. And then here are some examples of using a clock to overcome a challenge. Okay, let me just move ahead here. And then we, of course, also just let me jump back a bit. We show the flow of a tomorrow scene, which is when the revolutions take place. And then we also show the flow of future scene, when the liberated future and the PCs there, when their stories happen. Okay, and that's basically it. Once you get here, you would probably have enough to keep playing. Very much still a work in progress though, so once I get this copy out, I'd be happy to send PDFs to anyone who's interested. And I'll probably at some point put this up on itch.io. Cheers.